As some of you may know, I have a daughter with a very serious illness, and we've done a lot of praying for her and asked for a lot of prayer on her behalf. But what exactly is prayer? When you look at the state of prayer in the modern world, it's a very confusing issue. It's a mess, frankly. We use the same word prayer to mean anything from practices that are very private and mystical over into public performances, and finally over into practices that would be considered more of an attempt at magic than prayer. You can buy books like The Prayer of Jabez, which will tell you the secret to using prayer to break through to the blessed life, or Pray for a Financial Miracle with this book. Or you can use this book here to learn prayers that will rout demons and overthrow the powers of darkness. So you can see that the most popular idea of prayer in our modern world is a set of words, particular actions, particular intentions, a formula to get what we want from a higher power. Sort of like a cosmic vending machine. If we say the words, hold the intentions, perform the actions, and do it right, we get what we want. If we don't do it right, or we use the wrong formula, or don't have enough faith, the machine malfunctions. Now, this sort of activity might make sense if we were praying to, Zeus or Odin. Those two pagan deities, while powerful, were finite. They had emotions. They could be persuaded. They changed their minds. But the God that Christians pray to is considered omnipotent, omniscient, and omnibenevolent. And a petitionary prayer to that kind of being has its philosophical problems. For example, suppose we pray for something. Now, a God who knows everything, that is, he's omniscient, and can do everything, that is, he's omnipotent, and is all good, that is, he's omnibenevolent, already has a perfect plan for that situation. Now, is that thing that we prayed for part of his perfect plan? Well, if it isn't, then our prayer would be useless. God won't change his plan from good to bad because we prayed for something bad. But suppose what we prayed for is part of God's perfect plan. Wouldn't God do it anyway? So why pray for something God will do anyway? Isn't that redundant and useless? But let's look around for a minute at the real world. In our everyday experience, human behavior changes things. Causes produce effects. If we jump off a building, it'll probably cause injury or death. If I decide to cut myself with a knife, or at least pretend to, so that I could grab a catchy thumbnail for this video, it has consequences. Not a very big one in that case, but it has consequences. Now, God's will is often something that needs to be brought into the human sphere by human effort. What was one of the first things Jesus taught us to pray for? Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Which is really the complete and polar opposite of trying to bring our will into the human sphere by God's effort. Now, the character of C.S. Lewis in the movie Shadowlands put it like this.
Jack, what news?
Good news, I think, Harry. Yes, good news.
Very glad, Jack.
Thank you, Christopher. Thank you.
Christopher can scoff, but I know how hard you've been praying. Now God is answering your prayer.
That's not why I pray, Harry. I pray because I can't help myself. I pray because I'm helpless. I pray because the need flows out of me all the time, waking and sleeping. It doesn't change God, it changes me.
He's got very little on his plate.
Notice that in the Lord's Prayer, only one sentence is devoted to a purely physical need. Give us this day our daily bread. So the rest of the prayer is entirely a request for spiritual improvement. And even the daily bread passage may be a metaphor for our daily spiritual needs. Part of Jesus' teaching, remember, was to tell us what not to bother worrying about or even praying for. What we should eat, what we should drink, what we should wear, even our very lives. God, as Jesus said, knows what we need before we even ask for it. So, Jesus also said we shouldn't be public in our prayers. The kind of prayer Jesus teaches us is secret and simple. Seek first the kingdom, or the malkuth, of God, and all the things we used to be worried about will be given to us. In other words, as we deepen our inner spiritual reality, we find that the physical desires become less important. Not because people are sending us cash to buy air-conditioned doghouses, but because we cease to be the center of our own universe. Prayer doesn't change God, it changes us. How would we feel if we had raised a child who only called us to talk when they needed money and ignored us the rest of the time? We'd probably feel like something vital had been missing in that child's upbringing. Prayer is supposed to be a learning experience, a mystical experience, a transformation in communion between our highest natures and the divine nature. Now, as we reach higher communion with the divine, we can become particularly gifted about spiritually bringing God's world and God's will down to earth as a blessing to others. Now, once again, this isn't about changing God's mind. It's about changing the world spiritually to bring earth closer to heaven. And this takes more than simply faith. It takes practice and commitment and training. Now, if you're interested in receiving this kind of training, let me recommend the Home Temple program. I'll place a link to their site in the text below. Also, if you need spiritual assistance yourself, myself and several of the people here at our ministry are trained and available to help. I'll place a link for those kinds of requests also in the text below. Finally, please never be afraid to pray for anything that's really worrying you. Yes, God already knows that you need it, but you're not going to bore or displease God by your prayers, however spiritually naive they may be. Bringing your problems to God also brings you to God. And that is the beginning of all peace. That's all for this time. Peace and blessings on all of you. Bye for now.